Thank you for joining us in This Week in Turkey. I am Murat, Türsan. We begin this week with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan's meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. In the past decade, Turkey-Russian relations have had a wildly varying and, quite frankly, a puzzling outlook. Turkey and Russia, but more specifically Erdoğan and Putin, appear as though old schoolmates one second, but can look like sworn enemies the next. This is not necessarily out of the ordinary for the two states, as Russia and the Ottoman Empire were historic adversaries. However, then the new established Soviet Union was an instrumental ally in the Turkish War of Independence. The Cold War that preceded it, as the name implies, saw a cold but mostly stable relationship between the two states as Turkey joined NATO soon after it was founded. The last decade saw perhaps the most confusing state of relationships between the two states, enemies one second, then friends the next. So much so that Turkey's ally status with NATO and the United States has been under scrutiny by the West. Turkey has been steadily incurring weapons sanctions by the Western nations since the 70s, but the latest one was perhaps the most major, with Turkey being booted from the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter program upon the purchase of the Russian S-400 anti-aircraft system. And there has been mountains of speculations as to why. Was this a planned move by Erdoğan, or was it simply a geopolitical error? What is for certain, however, that Erdoğan's moves have been steadily and progressively earning the cold shoulder from the Biden administration. This week's closed-door meeting didn't make sense of anything either, unfortunately, but we hope that our guest will. Our guest tonight is the co-author of the book, Turkey Between the United States and Russia, the Doctor of Political Sciences, Emre Erşen. But before we have him on, let's do a short recap of the last decade.
President Erdoğan met with the Russian President Vladimir Putin on Wednesday, where the two heads of state had a closed-door meeting in Sochi, Russia. It is speculated that Erdoğan and Putin discussed matters relating to the Syrian peace process, Armenian-Azerbaijan peace process, the purchase of S-400 anti-aircraft missile systems, Crimea, Libya, and natural gas. Currently, Russia is both Europe and Turkey's largest natural gas supplier. Through a network of pipelines, in 2017, Russia supplied almost 40% of the EU's natural gas and a third of Turkey's in 2020. Turkey is ranked the world's 7th largest consumer of natural gas, and it imports virtually all of its supply, relying on it for heating and generating its electricity. Since the dissolution of the Soviet Union, Turkey and Russia's relations ranged from friendly to strained to simply adversarial. President Erdoğan, much like Europe, has long had its sights set on dropping Russia as their top supplier of the critical resource. Tensions escalated after the Syrian civil war broke out in 2011. Many speculated that the Erdoğan government saw the conflict as an opportunity to eliminate the Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad, who had actively opposed the gas pipeline that would originate from Qatar, transit Syria, and feed the gas-hungry nation in order to protect its ally, Russia's interests. As a prelude to the Turkish ground invasion of Syria on November 24, 2015, a Turkish F-16 shot down a Russian Su-24 attack aircraft on the grounds that it had invaded Turkish airspace, which the Russian authorities denied. The incident rendered the relations of the two nations at an all-time low, triggering Russian sanctions against Turkey. However, on August 9, 2016, President Erdoğan met with Putin in St. Petersburg, making Putin the first head of state Erdoğan had met with since the 2016 coup attempt that had sought to overthrow him only 25 days earlier. 15 days later, on August 24th, Turkey, supported by the United States, launched a full ground invasion of northern Syria, citing efforts to defeat ISIS and YPG, which is considered a terrorist organization by Turkey. On September 12, 2017, Turkey announced that it had signed a deal to purchase 4 batteries of the S-400 anti-aircraft missile system. The purchase of the systems was widely condemned by the United States, which threatened Turkey with a weapons sanctions, eventually kicking Turkey out of the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter program over their concerns of the potential for the S-400 systems to be used as an intelligence-gathering tool against the F-35. In October 2019, Erdoğan and Putin met yet again in Sochi, Russia, to discuss the establishment of a buffer zone in Syria. On February 27th of 2020, relations again deteriorated as a Russian airstrike in Syria left 36 to 60 Turkish soldiers dead. Turkey argued a deliberate attack by Russia, and Russia claimed that Turkey had failed to notify Russia of the Turkish military presence in the area. This crisis triggered a Turkish retaliatory offensive against the Syrian government. 7 days later, on March 5th, Putin and Erdoğan met again in Russia to discuss a ceasefire. Despite the widely oscillating relations between the two countries, however, Wednesday's meeting between Putin and Erdoğan displayed a more friendly mood. Erdoğan this time bringing up the possibility of purchasing more of the very missile batteries that booted Turkey out of the F-35 program. After the meeting, Erdoğan stated that losing the F-35 over the S-400 was worth it, signaling a shift in Turkish geopolitical alignment.
Joining me now, Dr. Erşen. Dr. Erşen, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure, sir. Now, Dr. Erşen, perhaps you can make sense of all of it. My first question is a simple one, but a pertinent one nonetheless. Can you sum up the delicate relationship between Turkey and Russia today? Both states appear to have interests in the same region. Neither want to go to war, but can't seem to get along either. Are the two states friends, foes, both, or neither? Your analysis.
Well, when we are talking about Turkish-Russian relationship, this is definitely a very complicated relationship. We should be aware of that from the very beginning. And as you mentioned, there are obviously some significant regional disputes between the two countries, and this has always been the case since the end of the Cold War. And we're not really talking about brand new conflicts when we talk about the regional issues in Turkish-Russian relations. Back in the 1990s, they also had significant disagreements with regard to the Caucasus and Central Asia. In the 2000s, although their relationship really has developed significantly, they still have these regional problems, but the focus of that regional relationship has shifted significantly to the Middle East and the East Mediterranean. Although the traditional problems in the Caucasus, like Nagorno-Karabakh, or the dispute between Azerbaijan and Armenia, or in the Black Sea, like as we see in the case of Ukraine and Crimea, they still continue. But currently, as you know, when we speak about the regional dimension of the Turkish-Russian relations, we mainly focus on Syria because they are trying to maintain a delicate balance there since at least 2016. So without Syria, I think it's really very hard to understand the current state of Turkish-Russian relations. But on the other hand, despite all these regional disputes, we have to emphasize that this is a relationship that is equally based on cooperation as well, especially economic cooperation. Natural gas, energy deals, and also bilateral trade, tourism, these are all very important issues, and the two countries want to continue this lucrative relationship with each other. So when we talk about the Turkish-Russian relations in general, I think we always need to keep in mind that dynamics of cooperation and dynamics of rivalry go hand in hand. So it's actually very hard for us to call this a relationship or an enemy relationship, or whether these two countries are friends or foes with each other. It's really very hard to say that, but we're very talking about realistic assessment of the relations by the two countries. And in that regard, regional disputes and economic links, I think, should be separated from one another. And this is actually what the two countries have been trying to do. They are actually following a policy that is usually called compartmentalization, trying to keep their regional disputes away from their very beneficial economic relations. And so far, this has really worked. But again, one of these regional disputes, like in Ukraine or Syria, this might really turn into a major issue. And as actually we also saw this back in 2015, when the Turkish forces shot down a Russian fighter jet, the economic relations were directly affected by that crisis between Turkey and Russia. So they also need to be very careful. But I think that the crisis in 2015 taught a lot to the leaders of the two countries. Now they're trying to keep their tensions as low as possible, although they are aware of their differences at the regional level. I think this is the best way to summarize the current state of affairs between Turkey and Russia.
I see, sir. Now, I want to move on to Turkey and the United States. It is no secret that the Biden administration has a far more distant relationship with Turkey and Erdoğan than previous administrations, perhaps born out of the S-400 crisis, perhaps other elements as well. Now, we can perhaps say that U.S.-Turkey relations are at their lowest point to date. Biden wouldn't even see Erdoğan during his visit to the United States last week. What would your analysis be on the current and perhaps future U.S.-Turkey relations with respect to Russia?
Well, I think although we are really seeing a significant, decline in the Turkish-US relations, we always need to keep in mind that these are also two NATO allies. And as you probably see in President Erdoğan's comments and statements about the United States, he also tries to emphasize this NATO link between the two countries. NATO has always been the most important pillar in Turkish foreign policy since the 1950s, and the relationship with the United States, once again, despite all the problems, has to go on because they also have a very long-standing military alliance with each other. That being said, yes, it's very obvious that the Biden administration and the way it sees foreign policy is significantly different from the previous administrations. Or maybe, I mean, we also saw this shift in United States foreign policy during the Trump era, but it wasn't directly reflected in the US relationship with Turkey, mainly because of Trump's way of, handling international affairs. He really had a personal relationship with President Erdoğan. So maybe that also enabled him to make a breakthrough in Turkish-US relations. It's very obvious that Biden is not keen on doing that. It's very clear that he has a completely different way of dealing with foreign policy. But nowadays, the United States foreign policy priorities are significantly shifting. And I think it's not only about Turkey, but also other NATO allies of the United States, and also other countries like Russia, China, and etc. They're all trying to take a position according to this new reality. The Asian dimension is becoming more and more visible in the US foreign policy. And I think the previously important regions in US foreign policy, like the Middle East or Europe, even though they will probably keep their importance to an extent, compared with Asia and the Chinese rivalry with China, they will probably be overshadowed. This is what we can say so far. So it's obvious that the Turkish priorities and the US priorities in foreign policy do not overlap anymore. And Turkey has been aware of this problem. This is how I see it since the Obama period. Later on, Trump came. But again, because of this personal way of dealing things, I think it was easier to tackle some of the problematic issues with Trump than Biden. But it's obvious that there are significant problems between the two allies. One of them is definitely the S-400 missiles. Neither side wants to back off regarding that issue. And more importantly, Turkey has announced its desire to buy a second batch of S-400 missiles. Whether that is going to become a reality, I don't know, because even the first set of missiles could not be completely activated, as you know, because of the United States sanctions. But if Turkey wants to continue this military relationship with Russia, that will definitely cause a significant problem in its relationship with the United States. And the CAATSA sanctions might be extended or enlarged. And this is, unfortunately, we're not really talking about a very favorable future regarding Turkish-US relations, as also acknowledged by President Erdoğan. He very clearly expressed his disappointment and even resentment regarding the trajectory of Turkish-US relations. And also another important issue is definitely the US relationship with the YPG in Syria. Turkey regards that organization as an extension of the PKK. And most of the remarks coming from the Turkish officials also underline that the United States, the impression in the Turkish side is that the United States, even though it's a NATO ally, has been supporting a terrorist organization, the PKK, through the YPG and PYD. But there, I think we also need to be very careful. Why? Because Russia is also having significant relations with the YPG. It's not only the United States which tries to reach out to the YPG as a local actor in Syria. Russia also has significant links with that actor. And I think in that regard, maybe Turkey should also try to keep an eye on what Russia does regarding the YPG. Because even if the United States is completely out of Syria, in the future, most probably Turkey will need to directly talk to Russia regarding the YPG problem. And Russia's position regarding the YPG is not the same with Turkey. They don't regard the PKK as a terrorist organization at all, for example, whereas the United States at least accepts that the PKK is a terrorist organization. So, but again, because of all these problems, I think, especially under the Biden administration, because of this shift in the priorities of the United States in foreign policy, it's not really very easy to talk about a very bright future in terms of Turkish-US relations, at least for the foreseeable future. But again, we should probably mention that these are two NATO allies. So there is no way they can just completely ignore each other. I think the contacts will continue, and it's a good news that Biden and Erdoğan will actually meet in the G20 meeting. So that shows us that this relationship, despite all the problems, should go on somehow because of the strategic realities.
I see, sir. And Dr. Erşen, it is difficult to mention Russia without mentioning natural gas. Russia, after all, is Europe's natural gas giant. Recently, we've seen a noticeable increase in the price of natural gas, though we were supposed to be in a period of normalization with Russia. Now, is this born out of geopolitical shifts, or is this simply the nature of the beast, with fuel prices increasing post-COVID? Can I get your opinion on that?
I mean, natural gas has always been a geopolitical issue. I mean, even though we are talking about a purely economic subject, energy is usually regarded as a purely economic subject. But obviously, because some countries produce it and some countries buy it, it immediately becomes a geopolitical issue. And also, if you add the pipelines into the equation, I mean, the pipelines need to pass through some countries, as you see in the case of Ukraine. For example, it really has become a geopolitical issue in the last few years because of that problem. But this latest increase in the natural gas prices is more related with the COVID-19 dynamics. The European market especially was not prepared for, in terms of their natural gas storage and other things. Other economic concerns have really pushed the prices to a very unprecedented level. And Russia doesn't have much to do with it, at least in this case. But obviously, it will try to take advantage of the situation because, as you know, very recently, the United States also lifted its rejection or its veto over the construction of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which is a direct pipeline between Russia and Germany. And many people expect when the pipeline, Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and also the Turk Stream, which directly runs to Turkey, when they fully start to operate, it will be a significant geopolitical challenge for Ukraine and also for the European Union. So obviously, Russia is trying to take advantage of the situation. But I cannot really say that this current crisis in natural gas is directly related with Russia or Gazprom. It's more related with the market, the situation of the market after the COVID-19 pandemic in many European countries. But for the foreseeable future, Gazprom will definitely will be the main beneficiary of this new situation, because as the prices go up, this is always something good for Russia, because the Russian economy is mostly based on these energy exports, not only natural gas, but oil. As long as oil prices and natural gas prices keep their high level, Russia will definitely be quite happy about it. And it will definitely give Russia a significant geopolitical leverage over the other countries. And as you probably know, in this latest meeting between Erdoğan and Putin, one of the key items on their agenda was the natural gas, because Turkey also needs to renew some of the natural gas contracts with Russia. So, and Russia wants to take advantage of this latest economic situation in Europe. So it has really become a very tough issue to discuss for Turkey, but also for other countries regarding Russia. It really strengthened Russia's hand in the last few weeks, I can say.
I see, sir. I see. And finally, I'd like to end on a different note. Turkey and Russia had tried their hand at a peace process in Syria earlier last year, and it appears they're going at it again. Now, do you think both countries will be able to attain their geopolitical goals in the region, or do you think that there's a clear winner or clear loser, or perhaps is this a stalemate?
Well, I think some kind of a balance has been reached in Syria, mainly after 2015, when Russia interfered militarily on the side of the Assad regime. This was quite unexpected at the time. Nobody expected Russia to really become so visible in the Syrian theater. But obviously, this was a choice, a deliberate choice made by the Russian leaders. They took a geopolitical risk, and that risk seems to have paid off, which is the reason why we regard Russia as a great power nowadays is because of all these adventures in Syria, in Libya, etc. So the Syrian operation of Russia definitely changed the geopolitical map in the region, and in 2015. Later on, when Turkey got included in this picture, it also received some advantages from this. I mean, again, the thing that made Turkey a very formidable regional player in the Middle East is the military interventions in Syria, the cross-border military operations that were conducted by Turkey. So, but we need to keep in mind that the two countries needed each other at the beginning, and also need each other for this balance to continue. Neither Russia nor Turkey alone cannot shape the dynamics in Syria all by themselves. And I think Russia is also aware of that. That's why they're holding these trilateral meetings with Iran and Turkey. So, as you know, apart from this bilateral relationship between Turkey and Russia in Syria, there is also a trilateral relationship going on between Russia, Turkey, and Iran. That, I think, is also very important. So none of the countries are totally happy about the situation. They all have their own problems in Syria. In Idlib, for example, it's really very hard to reconcile Turkey and Russia's positions. But nevertheless, they are aware that they need each other to at least keep the status quo, because this current status quo brings some advantages to all the parties. Disadvantages, but also advantages. In Turkey's case, for example, if this relationship with Russia collapses, this means that the Idlib operation of Russia and Assad regime will immediately start, and that will mean a significant refugee flow to Turkey. And Turkey is not able to take any new refugees, as also indicated by President Erdoğan many times. So I think everybody, although they have their problems in Syria, they're also happy that they can cooperate with each other, especially in the case of Russia, Turkey, and Iran. This really has become a relationship of agreeing to disagree rather than a perfect strategic partnership. Sometimes people refer to Turkey-Russia relations as some kind of a strategic partnership, but I think that's a very bold statement. What they're trying to do there is to make sure that they become the power brokers in that region. And in order to do that, they need their military power. I think this is what the United States missed from the very beginning. Instead of becoming a direct military actor, unlike Russia, they decided to use their proxies in the region through YPG, but that also weakens the United States position in Syria. That's another probably question. But currently, I think the status quo, again, as also indicated by the latest meeting between Putin and Erdoğan, I think they want to extend this relationship or extend these agreements that they signed with regard to Idlib. As you know, the latest agreement was signed in March 2020, and the agreement doesn't work perfectly. Everybody is aware of that. Turkey is unable to separate the moderates from the radicals, and Russia is not able to restrain the Assad regime at all times. But nevertheless, because they want this relationship or what they want the status quo to continue, they do their best to make sure that these deals go on, at least on paper, because there is no other or a better alternative in Syria. So I think that's why this status quo or the current situation will continue in Syria, especially in Idlib, for some time to come. From time to time, there might be escalations because the two countries are also trying each other with these escalations. But after their meetings, as you know, they always give a very favorable picture regarding Syria, as they also did very recently. So I don't personally expect a new crisis to emerge between Turkey and Russia only because of Syria. So this is probably what we can say about the future of Syria.
I see. Dr. Erşen, thank you for joining us. And for folks at home who want to do a deep dive into the subject, we'll have that book available down in the description. Dr. Erşen, thank you again.
Thank you.
Continuing on with domestic politics, election season is fast approaching, and by election, yes, we do mean the big one. The Turkish presidential election will be held in 2023, the latest, and all parties are in strategy mode. This will be the second ever Turkish presidential election since the constitution was changed in 2017 in a referendum transitioning from a parliamentary system to a presidential system. Recep Tayyip Erdoğan has been the nation's sole political heavyweight for the last 2 decades, first time being elected as the prime minister in 2001, serving as the head of the state since. This time around, however, the opposition parties feel confident. Turkey has been racing from one economic meltdown to the next since 2013. During that time, Turkey lost a third of its GDP per capita, and according to the polls, that has been slowly eating away at Erdoğan's popularity. Now, Erdoğan is many things, but he's no political rookie. He has always had a strong base that he knows how to keep happy, but the opposition feels that this time is opportune. The People's Democratic Party, a majority ethnic Kurdish party, has just released their party platform that emphasizes a call to justice, call to democracy, and a call to peace, signaling that they are open for a dialogue for solving the Kurdish problem. And what better time than the opposition alliance? As not too long ago, CHP met with the provisional Kurdish Iraqi government, declaring that people need not look for any further than the opposition to solve the Kurdish political crisis.
In an event in Ankara on Monday, the People's Democratic Party released their new long-awaited document detailing the party's platform heading into Turkey's upcoming election season, expecting to take place in 2022 or 2023. The platform was announced by HDP co-chairs Mithat Sancar and Pervin Buldan, who had made the announcement under a Turkish-Kurdish banner reading, "A call to justice, a call to democracy, a call to peace," the main slogan of the event. The party platform, consisting of 11 main topics, placed emphasis on the themes of democracy and finding a solution to the Kurdish question. But the party platform announcement went beyond just addressing the Kurdish issue, taking particular aim at Turkey's presidential system and calling openly for a return to the previous parliamentary system. Other opposition figures, including the Meral Akşener, have recently made similar calls for a return to the old system. Turkey's current presidential system has been criticized by the opposition leaders as placing too much power in the hands of President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan, who himself campaigned for the referendum. Monday's events came on the heels of a renewed debate over the Kurdish question in Turkey in the past week, as well as an opposition coalition seemingly eager to court the country's Kurdish electorate, expected to be a key piece of a potential opposition victory in 2023. In comments released last week, main opposition leader Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu made headlines by saying he considered the HDP to be in solving the Kurdish question in Turkey, prompting discussion amongst politicians and the public regarding the resolution of the issue. Kılıçdaroğlu's conciliatory overtures toward the HDP were interpreted by many as an attempt to broaden the opposition's political tent heading into 2023. The Nation Alliance, consisting primarily of the CHP and İYİ Party, does not include the HDP. The Nation Alliance is expected to run a joint presidential candidate to challenge Erdoğan in 2023. Consequently, although the HDP remains separate from the Nation Alliance coalition, Monday's events showcase some of the priorities shared across Turkey's opposition, chiefly resolution of the Kurdish question and a return to the former parliamentary system. Echoing Kılıçdaroğlu's comments, the HDP party platform declared Turkey's Grand National Assembly is the place to solve the Kurdish problem, underlining their belief that the resolution to the long-running issue will be achieved through legislative means.
In other news, the rent crisis in Turkey continues. Real estate figures have rent prices increasing by 50% in major cities amid the pandemic. But it's not just your average renters that are suffering. As face-to-face education resumes in Turkey, thousands of university students find themselves without homes. The rental market is bone dry, and there isn't nearly enough dormitory space to accommodate the almost 8 million students returning to school. Protests broke out on Monday as university students with no roof over their heads made their voices heard in major cities. The protests were quickly quelled by the local authorities, however, dozens being detained for the night. President Erdoğan had a less than sympathetic reaction to the protest, first declaring that there was plenty of room for everybody, later accusing the students of being terrorists. One thing is for certain at this time, however, unless serious action is taken, this is only the beginning of the problem.
Turkey's rent crisis spills over to education as soaring rents drive homeless students to protest across Turkey. The protests in Istanbul this past weekend have spread to cities such as Ankara, Izmir, and Kocaeli. Following a year and a half of online education, students returning to universities are being confronted with skyrocketing rent prices and a severe shortage in dormitory accommodations. There are only 769 state dormitories for the 7.9 million university students in Turkey, leaving thousands of students to sleep on the streets. On Monday night, the police intervened in the protests of students protesting the rise in dormitory fees and rents in Istanbul, Kadıköy, and Izmir. The students stated that the number of detentions in Istanbul reached 50, and the total number of people detained in Istanbul exceeded 80. The Istanbul governor's office stated that 28 protesters were detained in Kadıköy Moda. The 28 detained were shortly released upon the order of the prosecutor's office. In a statement after the cabinet meeting, AKP chairman and president Recep Tayyip Erdoğan lashed out at the protesting university students, stating, "These so-called students are exhibiting exactly what the Gezi Park incident was, indicating that the students were inciting violence in the protest of the government." İYİ Party chair Meral Akşener commented on Erdoğan's statement on her Twitter account. Akşener remarked, "Welcome to the Terrorist of the Week program with Mr. Erdoğan. You are not able to look after your own students. You are not able to provide them dormitories. You are not able to carry out your duties in a social state. But it's all the students' fault, right?
That's it for us in This Week in Turkey. I have been Murat Türsan, and thank you for joining us.
Türkiye'nin sivil, bağımsız, özgür ve çoğulcu bir medya ortamına ihtiyacı var. Medyascope, 20 Ağustos 2015'te bu ihtiyacı karşılamak üzere yola çıktı. Ama yolumuz uzun. Bu yolculukta bize Patreon veya YouTube'un katıl butonu üzerinden katkıda bulunabilirsiniz. Destek verin, sizinle güçlenelim.